Welcome to the workshop Movers, Shakers, Denim Cloth Haters, or How to Homeschool Your Sensory Intense Kids by me, Penny Rogers. Let's get started. First, we need to talk about what is a sensory intense kid. So, sensory intense kids are always moving, always shaking. They're always on the go. Like they have so much energy. You're thinking you could bottle that up and sell it, but they can't, when they are sitting, their legs are bouncing or their hands are moving. They're always, something on their body is always moving. They will run rather than walk. They will jump rather than step down. And they will constantly crash into things. And by this, I mean they'll run and crash into the couch, or they will flop on the floor instead of just sitting down, or they'll crash into the wall. They look like they have like they're uncoordinated, they're clumsy, but they really aren't. So they're usually the loudest person in the room, although they really need it quiet for their sensory needs. That's a misfire of the interoceptive system. So they're really, really loud because they don't know how to navigate the volume of their voice, or how to, change it, things like that. But they also need a quiet because if it gets to be too much noise, they are unable to process because all of their sensory systems are going to the noise. So, yep, really loud, but they need a quiet. They chew on everything: their clothes, their pencils, their pens, their crayons, their toys, your kitchen utensils. I have a chewer at my house actually, and we have a knife with rubber handles on it, so it's easier for the kids to hold while they cut, which is a issue we have. But one of my knives has teeth prints in it because my chewer, Jojo, chewed on it while he was eating dinner. So he's literally eating food and he couldn't help himself. He needed the input of chewing on the rubber handle. Yeah. They're also known as sensory seekers, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The difference between a seeker and an avoider, and why you need to know, and how important that is for you to put it in your homeschool day. Now, a sensory intense kid also is a risk taker. Can be a good or bad thing. This particular time, it's a bad thing because they're a risk taker with no regard for danger or consequences. Their ball rolls into the street, they are going to run into the street to get it. All they know is that they want their ball. No concept of the fact that if they run into the street and they don't look, a car could run them over. Or they need the input of jumping, so they jump off the top of the porch with no regard for the fact that at the bottom of the porch is a cactus that they're going to land in and it's going to hurt, or they're going to break their leg, things like that. So they're definitely risk takers, and not in a good way. So, what you need to do when you have sensory intense kids is you need to, we often plan for math, science, all the academics. We add their therapies in there, of course, because we can't not, and things like that. But what we really need for these kids is what is called a sensory diet. Now, it has nothing to do with food, but what you do is you put in physical activities throughout your day that will accommodate the sensory input needs that your child has. So if he is a crasher, then you would put up crash pads so that he could, which are sort of like large cushions, and it softens it so your child can run up and crash into it. And you would add that into your day. I normally add sensory items in between an easy subject and a hard subject for my kids, sort of like a reward for doing the easy subject, and then it gets them to be calm for the hard subject. So we rotate between easy, hard, and it's different for every child. So easy for Logan, my oldest, would be math. Hard would be writing because he has autism and he has, fine motor skills that need honing. Easy for Madison, my avoider, would be writing because she likes that. She's the creative type, but she has dyscalculia. So math is really hard for her. So I would give her a sensory break that she really liked in between math and writing. So that way she got a reward for doing the writing and woohoo, we're done with that subject. But also it calmed her and put her nervous system into a good spot so that she could go ahead and tackle math. We didn't have to worry about she needed input or the lights were too dark or whatever because she had her sensory needs met in between those two. It does add to your day. Let me clarify that because you got to add the sensory needs in so your day gets a little bit longer, but excuse me, we'll talk about how we do that in a little bit. We also, if they're an avoider, which we're about to talk about, you also do lack of stimuli to calm down overactive nervous system. So an avoider will want, you might dim the lights. You might, goodness, you might let them wear headphones, things like that, so that they don't get any outside input to their sensory system or their nervous system, so that way it can calm itself down, right? It's just these, we just have to know everything these days, don't we? So let's talk about sensory seekers. A seeker is normally the mover shaker, lots of outside input to calm them down. They need to run, they need to jump, they need to swing. They usually love to chew on everything. Now your child doesn't have to have every item on this list in order to be a seeker, but you'll see what they are based on if he has any of these, excuse me, then he is definitely a seeker. They're always moving, jumping, swinging, always on the go. They love deep pressure, like being in a pool. It's a proprioceptive input. So they like the deep pressure of the water in the pool or a bear hug. I could always tell when Logan needed his weighted vest to be put on because he would walk up and he would hug me like really, 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 really hard. And normally that's not how he hugged. He just, walks up and hugs you. So when he needed that deep pressure of his weighted vest or some heavy work, then that was a dead giveaway every time. They're always touching or rubbing you, like they always got to have like their hand on you, or they're going to lean over and muss up your hair, things like that. They take risk. Of course, we talked about that with no concept of danger or consequences, and they're the loudest person in the room. It's funny how loud they are when they need it. They need it quiet. A sensory avoider is the opposite end of that spectrum. They're overly cautious. So they're not going to cross the street if any cars are coming, even if they're 3 lights away. They're sensitive to lights, to sounds, to smells. So you'll need to dim the lights and not have the candle burning and have them wearing, some sort of headphones. They tend to be actually a picky eater due to texture issues. Now, a picky eater because of texture issues isn't just a kid who doesn't like the taste of that. Madison, for example, is a picky eater, and it's due to texture issues. She doesn't like things like blueberries and grapes because you never know what it's going to taste like. Is it going to be tart? Is it going to be sweet? Is it going to be mushy? Is it going to, squirt juice out in her mouth? So she becomes a picky eater due to texture issues. They don't normally, a sensory warrior doesn't normally like to be touched. So since Madison is my avoider, I'll talk about her. She didn't like to have her hair brushed. She has a really sensitive scalp. So we cut her hair short so that she didn't need to get her hair cut or pulled back and things like that. And an avoider is your denim cloth hater. There are certain fabrics, tags, and clothing will drive them so crazy that they can't even think or do their schoolwork because all they can think about is that tag in the back of their shirt that is rubbing across their skin, or the itchy pants that they have on because they happen to be denim or corduroy or whatever, but things like that. So, or their socks. Socks are a big one. The seams in the socks. It's okay. These days, manufacturers have heard parents and they have made tagless shirts, seamless socks. You can figure out what kind of fabric they like. I did not know that Logan did not like, my autistic kid did not like denim until he was a teenager, and I asked him some questions, and I had to do some investigating because he only wore his jeans when I insisted, which wasn't often because we lived in Florida at the time, and it's usually hot in Florida. So I had to really dig in and ask him certain questions, and come to find out he didn't like the way it felt on his skin. I'm buying him jeans because I think, jeans are easy. But he's not wearing them because jeans just make him itch and he doesn't like that. So, hello, they make jeans with fleece lining so that I can have the denim. He can be in jeans, looking cute, and he can be comfortable with the fleece lining or the flannel so that, you know, best of both worlds. So, they're going to be your denim cloth haters, like I said. You have to, before you can even do the sensory diet, you have to determine if your child is a seeker or an avoider. And here's the fun part, they can be both. Yeah, both. So sometimes they'll need lots of input to be calm, and you have to let them out to swing, have them jump on the trampoline, make them run around the house if they want to. Careful with the run around the house because sometimes you have nosy neighbors who decide you're punishing your kid and they call the police on you. Not that I have experience with that, but so just they need those breaks, but when they have those breaks, they need to go do something. And an avoider will need the break, but they want to go into their bedroom where it's dark and it's quiet and it's cool or it's hot, whatever temperature they like it. So a seeker will need to go do something, and an avoider will need to go somewhere and get away from everybody. Are they easily overwhelmed by outside stimuli? That's going to tell you that that particular child is an avoider in that situation. So, for example, Madison gets selective mutism when we're out in public and she has to speak to people because the sights, there's so many people going by, the music is playing. I don't know why they play music in the stores. I really don't. So the music is playing, and in like a grocery store, you have all the smells of the groceries. Heck, in a regular store, you have all the smells of the people and all that going on. So she just gets overwhelmed by all that. Her nervous system takes all of her spoons, we call it here in Autism Land, but it takes all of everything she has just to get through that. So she can't formulate words too to talk. So we had to, do some things to make her successful in that particular situation. So your child will probably fluctuate between seeker and avoider depending on the situation. It also depends on how good a day sensory wise it's going. Sometimes all of the kids will get overwhelmed just with everything going on, but they become avoiders because they can't make the decision of what to do, or they simply don't know what their body needs at that moment. So sometimes you have to investigate and sort of do a little trial and error and see what's happening there. So some ideas for seekers are, you can of course let them outside to the trampoline, any kind of jumping. You can get a indoor trampoline or a rebounder inside too, so that they, won't break their leg. Unless they're my kid, they're going to break their leg anyway. So an indoor outdoor trampoline would be great, just so they jump and they get that input of jumping up and down. They also heavy work like moving rocks or bringing in the groceries or shoveling the driveway or sidewalk if you happen to get snow, wearing a weighted vest as Logan is in this particular picture, things like that. Anything that requires them to pick up something heavy, because the heaviness of the object is what's going to give them the input they need, the proprioceptive input that they need. You can also, if you don't have, like, you don't have rocks to move, you live in Florida or Arizona, the two places we've lived, it doesn't snow, so you have to shovel. And your child just doesn't want to wear his weighted vest outside. You can have him wear a backpack with heavy things in it or filled up so that it's heavy. Not so heavy, of course, that you break his back, but just heavy enough so it gives him that input. I have put in books in the backpack if we're going somewhere. I've even put in rocks in there so that it gets heavy enough for him. The older your child gets, the heavier the item's going to need to be in order for the heavy work, or the longer they're going to have to move the items for the heavy work to work for them. Of course, we have the trampoline. You can also have them carry around or carry to the laundry room the full laundry basket. They can get a bucket of water and water the flowers. You can fill up a 5-gallon bucket with, I don't know, whatever, um, just so that it's heavy and they have to pick it up. We have, in those food storage things, they have the 5-gallon buckets. You could maybe get one of those and, for your food storage, your long term storage, and then just have your child move it around. So it doesn't have to be anything, off the wall expensive or anything like that. You're just trying to get them to get the pressure. That's why the pool works. So if you have a pool, you could do pool time, or you could go ahead and just let them play in the pool for a while and then get back out. Therapy swings that you can have inside are perfect, or just a regular backyard swing. I like to have both because sometimes it rains. Go figure. And you don't want your kid out there on the swing when it's raining and thundering and lightning. So even though he will tell me that the statistical odds of him being hit by lightning are very high, so are very low, excuse me. But you can also do joint compressions and brushing. That's when you take their joints together and you grab each side of, say, the elbow, and you push it together so that it sort of gives it the pressure. And of course, brushing is when you use the body brush to brush back and forth. I'll put in the comments below the I have an article on that so that you can get all the ins and outs of how to do the joint brushing and or the joint compressions and brushing. There's also an article with many examples of a sensory diet and what your child needs, that I'll put in the comments as well. If you have a chewer, you can get some jewelry. They have some that are good for preschoolers all the way up to teenagers. My chewer that I spoke of earlier, Jojo, is a teenager. He's about to be a young adult, so he doesn't want to wear like a shark, baby shark around his neck while he goes out. But he does need to wear something. We have to recognize that he didn't grow out of his, his need to chew. So they have things like, uh, I can't even think of it. The tip of an arrowhead. I don't know why I forgot that. But you can put that. They have arrowheads that they can wear around their neck. They can have them dog tags. They can put it under their shirt so people don't notice it. And of course, they have the cute little sharks and bunnies and things like that for the younger kids. If you don't happen to have jewelry on you, then you can feed them some, if appropriate, if they're old enough. Like, don't feed them hard candy if they're 2, because they're going to swallow it, and you're going to learn the Heimlich maneuver pretty quickly. But hard candy, if they're older, carrots are perfect. Pretzels, gum will work in a pinch, but it's not going to give them. One of the things that a chewer wants is the sensory input of chewing on the ice, the food, whatever it is, just the crunch. Yeah, the crunch. That's what I'm looking for, of chewing on it. So gum's not going to give them that. But if you have a chewer and you're out and about, or you're somewhere that you can't just get up and go get a carrot or a piece of candy or something, and you don't have your jewelry, gum's going to work. Okay. So I always have peppermints and things like that in my purse. 1, I get motion sick, and peppermint's good for that. 2, so if I happen to be out and Jojo bites off his jewelry, or he happens to need the input and not be wearing it, I still have something in my purse to give him. Rock candy, just you're looking for something crunchy is what you're doing if you want to use food. We don't always use food because, let's face it, you don't want the chewer to make the connection of, when I need the sensory input, I'm going to get food. But if you don't have jewelry, or they just don't want to chew on that, I'd rather give them food than have them chew on their pencil or my knife or something, or their sibling, something else. So that's what we're going to do every time. Now, avoiders are they're a little easier to implement the ideas, but they're not necessarily easier to figure out. So, what I do is buy several outfits in different colors or even the same color and a fabric that they found acceptable. So, for Logan's jeans, we just bought several. Once I figured out he'd wear the jeans, if they were flannel or soft on the inside, then I just bought several pair when I bought the one that made. I did it right off Amazon. You can have try before you buy, even so you can send it back. So he could try them on at home. And once I figured out it worked, we just bought several pair of those. Sweatpants are the same way. We found some sweatpants that are super soft and lined, and so we just bought several pair. Madison would, when they're little kids and they get the little shirt and the shorts, the little outfit together. I found a fabric that was acceptable to her, and I bought it in every color twice. So because that's the only outfit she would wear. That way, we always had. I kept pushing her to try because you don't know if they're going to like it until they try it. So I kept asking her to wear different materials to see if she liked it. But there was always that we have the safe outfit right here. So if you put it on and you're going to die, we can just go right back to the safe outfit. So sort of you push them out of their comfort zone a little teeny tiny bit. And if it works, great, you stay there. But if it doesn't work, you can always step back because we always want them to feel like their needs are being heard and met. We always have noise canceling headphones on us. So, Beats, I've always put my Beats on when my kids are being super loud. If you don't need to, I turn on an audiobook too. If you don't need sound to come through them, then the best place to get noise canceling headphones, the cheapest, is going to be like Walmart or Lowe's in their contractor section where they have the noise buffers or the noise canceling headphones in their safety gear. So I would do that. I can put that the Walmart link, that the one we use, in the comments too. Or if they'll wear earplugs, you can use earplugs. I always have a pair of, they're called loops earplugs. Let me just get out of the thing here. And what it is it's a little, oh, I should put it up so you can see it. It's just a little earplug, and it has a on the end, it has haha. On the end, it has a little loop on it so that you can get out of your ear quickly. This particular one is noise canceling, so I wear it at night. Remember that I have a kid who hates noise, but she's the loudest person in the room. So when I go to bed, because they're all young adults now, the older ones, and so when I go to bed, they're still up. So they pretty much put me to bed, but when I go to bed, I can still hear them. I can hear Madison talking to Logan, even if they're down the hallway in the library. Okay, so I wear these when I go to bed, and it just fits in your ear. It's called a loop earplug. I'll put the link in the comments for you, and then it just works. They have an experience one that buffers out the noise. It's not noise canceling. It's just noise reducing. I wear those when I'm out shopping because the noise will use up all my spoons. See, moms can have sensory needs too. I also have that in case the kids, like Madison, with her selective mutism, can get overwhelmed quickly in a store. So I just carry them in my purse, and we just whip them out when we need to put them in. And it it buffers the noise, but you can still hear people talking to you, and you can still talk. So they're called loop earplugs. I love them. We also have a safe food to eat for Madison at every single meal. So if I know she's going to eat Kraft macaroni and cheese, then I make sure that I have Kraft macaroni and cheese available to make for her in case she just can't eat the Brussels sprouts, and she loves Brussels sprouts, but sometimes it's just too much. Or she doesn't know what the texture of the chicken's going to be, or it could be too cooked, so it's crunchy when it's not supposed to be. So we always have some sort of safe food that I know she will eat at every meal. Worst case scenario, she can have a sandwich. Okay, food is not something I argue about. You either like it or you don't, and if you don't, then go make yourself something else. But my job as the mom is to make sure that something else is available to them because she's not being a picky eater because she doesn't want to eat the Brussels sprouts. She's being a picky eater because sensory wise, she can't handle the texture. Those are two different ends of the spectrum for picky eating. I do have a picky eater who will tell me lettuce is spicy. Okay. It's just because it's a vegetable and she wants to eat candy. This particular eater, though, Madison, is a picky eater because she has texture issues. So they get different responses to their picky eating. We also keep noise to a minimum during homeschool time. Sometimes that means I have to split them up into different rooms because together they can be loud. If you get more than two children together, they're just gonna be loud. It's just the nature of being a child. So if I see a child getting overwhelmed by the amount of noise, or they just can't focus, so they're playing around, we'll do the split up and they'll go to opposite ends of the house to keep the noise to a minimum, or I'll have them put their headphones on or their earplugs. Dim the lights, because if you have like a super bright light, you guys have been in the grocery store, fluorescent lights. My kids can hear the fluorescent lights humming. I can't, but all of them can. So it really, sometimes the lights just, they hear the hum and you don't. Okay, we'll just turn off that light. Or we'll just dim the lights so that you don't get all that oral input. It's okay. Or visual input, excuse me. So something as simple as dimming the lights works, then just dim the lights. And I don't use scented sprays or candles. I love candles during homeschool time. I will get a candle on to burn for a couple of minutes later on in the day, but never while we're doing lessons because I don't want to overwhelm them. She's an avoider. There's nothing I can do about that. I just have to live with it. So take the time. If it's summertime, it's perfect. If you're having a homeschool break, whatever, but take the time to figure out your child's sensory needs and then learn how to meet them. That's where articles like the one I linked below um, are going to work for you. So if you learn your child's what your child's needs are they proprioceptive? Do they need heavy work? Are they interoceptive? Do they have a hard time processing so they can't see that or hear that their voice is really loud? That's also the one where they don't know that they're thirsty or that they are full. So you figure out what your child's sensory need is, and you can ask their occupational therapist if you happen to be going to therapy. You can just flat out say, "Can you tell me my child's sensory needs?" and ask them for examples of how to meet that at home, or do some research yourself. But once you know those needs, then you just incorporate them into your day, so that way your child is successful. So we keep lessons short. They gradually get longer the older they get. So as they move up from elementary school to middle school, it will get longer. As they go through middle school, it will gradually get longer. And then, of course, in high school, that's the longest. But even in high school, we're talking 30 to 45 minutes tops. One, if you have a sensory intense kid, that's all they're going to be able to do. When they're like in kindergarten, first grade, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 5 to 10 minutes is really all they can handle. Like they can't handle any longer. It's not that they don't want to do school or they're being defiant. They literally can't handle it any longer than that. So you want to keep your lessons short. I'd rather do 100 short lessons and be successful than try to power through it when they all need a break to reset their sensory systems. So you're going to be much more successful with your homeschool if you keep the lessons short and just do many multiple lessons. It may take us 3 10-minute sessions to get through math, or it may take us 5 10-minute sessions to finish up our writing. But it's okay. We get it done. Even slow progress is still progress. So you want to keep the lesson short, because in between the lessons, you don't just let them go off and run wild. You're going to do some brain breaks, is what we call them, to meet their sensory needs. They're just sensory breaks. Have them go go run around the house like we talked about. Or if they're an avoider, now would be a good time to let them sit in the closet where it's dark. Think what works. So just you're going to meet some sensory needs that you see happening right then in between the lessons. So if my ADHD child is having difficulty with impulse control, I know that he needs to go outside and swing. His next sensory break, or when we're done that lesson, I'm going to send him outside to swing. I'm going to send the avoider who can't stand the smell of the boys around her to her room to, lay on her bed where it's quiet and it's sort of dark and just sort of chillax, we call it. I'm going to send the chewer to go get some carrots. Things like that. I'm going to look at what their sensory need is at the moment and apply the next sensory break to that. With all of that said, learning doesn't have to happen at the table. You can learn anywhere. And if you look at this is my favorite post. I'm gonna go back to the ideas for seekers. You can see that Logan is reading while walking on a treadmill. I would have fallen down and broken my neck and been sprawled out in the middle of the living room dead. But he reads, he does his free reading and his required reading while walking on the treadmill. It gives him the sensory input of walking, and he gets his work done at the same time, multitasking at its finest. That works for him. That would not work for me, but it works for him. So we make it work for everybody else. Sometimes you just need to jump in the pool, and while the kids are in the pool or you're in the pool with them, I highly recommend getting in the pool with them. You can do math facts or go over spelling words, or if I'm not getting in the pool, I'll do read aloud while they're in the pool. Things like that. Just because you're not at the table, it doesn't mean that your child's not learning. The dyscalculic child, Madison, likes to do her math upside down in a chair. I don't know why. It works for her, though. So that's when she does math, upside down chair. I don't care where they do it. I don't care what kind of, if they're bouncing on an exercise ball, if they're using the rubber bands across the bottom to flick their feet back and forth. Whatever they need to get the job done works for me. So don't think that if you're not sitting around the table that your children aren't learning, because they are. When you're doing read aloud or things like that, let them play with Legos. Let them crochet. I've had a child, we do teaching textbooks, and so while she was listening to the instruction part, she would crochet a little, toy or whatever, one of those little stuffed animals. So it's your homeschool. You can do whatever your child needs, and it doesn't have to look like public school. So you really have to let that go, the illusion of public school, when you have a sensory intense child, because no matter what you do, it's not going to look like anybody else's homeschools if you're meeting their needs. If you make it look like everybody else's homeschool, I can guarantee you that you are not meeting their needs. So it's far more important to be successful with your child than what everybody else thinks. Remember that. It took me a long time to accept that, but remember that. So learning doesn't have to happen at the table. So thanks for joining me. That is my whole workshop. You can find me, of course, at my blogs, on my social media. If you have questions about, is your child a seeker or an avoider, what kind of sensory input does your child need, please feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to help you. And if you want to join us in Autism Land, we would love to have you. There are my social media names, so you can see that I'm everywhere, and I post different things on different platforms because not everybody needs the same thing on the platform. So I'd love for you to follow me. Thanks, and have a great day.